Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I am going to tackle yet another in a long list of politically correct topics. This one is, what about when women just stop trying to make themselves attractive? And somebody on my Medium page, I'm like cutting and pasting a lot of my stuff onto Medium, which get me a whole new audience. Who knew? There seems to be a whole thing out there on Medium. People like Medium. So follow me on Medium if you like Medium. And I wrote my Men Need to Think Their Wife is Really Hot for Things to Work article there. And, I also have a podcast on that. And this guy said that it seems to me that the wife has some responsibility to make herself attractive to her husband. Of course, the husband in turn needs to make himself attractive to his wife. I often look at couples and wonder at what point did she/he give up on trying to be attractive? What about a wife who stops caring what she looks like when she goes out with her husband? She stops dressing attractively. She stops buying new clothes. She stops having her hair done. She stops using makeup, etc. After years of marriage, wives and husbands take each other for granted. Marriages deteriorate, though the couple may stay together. They simply cohabitate in a sexless marriage. Well, good point. Shit, everybody sees that. So I will address that topic, but in case you thought I forgot to tell you to subscribe, I did not tell you to not blah, 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 blah. I did not forget to do that. You must subscribe, in fact, because you will want to hear my companion piece coming right after this on what about when men stop trying, which I'm going to address separately because it is a separate issue and is not really the same as when women do. And it doesn't lead to the same sorts of outcomes, and it isn't motivated by the same sorts of things usually, although there's some overlap. So please do subscribe so that you can hear that as well as so many of my other scintillating episodes. Okay, so what do I think about this? I think, yeah, totally. You're right. It sucks. It's part of the marital contract that you guys try to make each other happy. So there are very few young people that are going to say that they are not looking for someone attractive. If they say that, they're lying. You could be looking for, smart, funny. You could be looking for successful, ambitious, going to be a good parent, all this stuff. But the majority of people are also looking for somebody that's physically attractive in whatever way they deem attractive, right? So you are not going to marry, hopefully, and I've talked about when people do this, and it's not good because it never gets better. You never can start having chemistry with somebody who you don't have chemistry with. But most people feel chemistry with their spouse due to a range of things, and that isn't just having a young body. So if somebody's presenting themselves a certain way, like a person who cares about their appearance in a very conventional way, which for a woman would mean wearing clothes that are somewhat trendy, fashionable, and wearing makeup, doing your hair, whatever. Now, if they stop doing that, the guy is obviously within his rights to be disappointed, as she would be if he stopped doing things that were a big reason why she married him. Now, for women, it's usually more about other things that are equally shallow. In as much as any of this is shallow, right? I don't think any of it's shallow. It's not shallow to want a wife who's hot. It's not shallow to want a husband who has a good job. That stuff's not shallow. That's based on evolutionary psychology principles and is the basis of our civilization. Women want to find a man who can take care of them in some way, and men usually want to find a fertile, attractive woman. So if you have a problem with that conceptualization, this probably is not the podcast for you, but you probably didn't subscribe. So look on the bright side. No harm, no foul. This was a free waste of 4 minutes and 19 seconds, and you can stop listening. But for those of us who believe that there are some evolutionary imperatives and there are some basic biological reasons that people want one another to still be attractive and to have sex with one another, then yes, it is kind of a breach of contract here for anybody to just give up the ghost. It's very similar to when you just stop wanting to have sex. That's not fair, right? You can't, as I say many times, you can't unilaterally decide to be in a sexless marriage, or, I wrote the article on kissing, you can't decide to be in a kissless marriage. You can't just decide that. Of course, it's your body. Your body, your choice, 100%. If you want to never buy new clothes again, schlump around looking like God knows what, and, never have sex, that's cool. You just shouldn't probably still be married. Because it's not fair. That person didn't marry you in this state. Now, does this mean that if a person is suffering from severe depression, if somebody is sick, if somebody cannot get their shit together at all, they were grieving, they're going through a hard time, then, you should say, well, guess what? Here is this PowerPoint I made where I've juxtaposed a picture of you 20 years ago with this picture of what you look like now. As you can tell, you look like shit, so I'm out the door. Certainly not. But what we're talking about is not... we're not talking about people who are out to get one another here. Nobody is, people who listen to my podcast about how to help your relationship usually are not tremendous assholes, So they've probably waited a good long time. They've taken all this stuff into account. They've thought, she's tired. She has children. The children are now 15 and 12. She was nursing again 15 years ago. She has depression. Well, shit, most of us women do cyclically. She has anxiety. She has this. She has that. She has the other. But I mean, if it's been many years and it's fairly obvious to you that your spouse has just really changed their value system and they no longer care about what they look like, then bring it up, right? You should definitely bring it up. I tell men this all the time. Why don't you buy her lingerie? Why don't you buy her something that's what you would like her to wear? She probably doesn't even understand that you give a shit. Because remember how I said how men screw themselves, no pun intended, with the blowjob issue? Refer back to the blowjob podcast. Haha, just kidding. I'm just pretending that anybody hasn't listened to that podcast that's listened to my other podcast, because all of you obviously listened to the blowjob episode. And you probably remember when I said the men screw themselves in this way, because when the woman says early dating, she's like, do you want those women that are just like porn? And then the guy's like, oh no, honey, I don't want anything like that. I just want you. You are who I love. And then she doesn't understand he means, I don't need a woman who's tiny, skinny, with huge boobs and bleach blonde hair that has also another girlfriend that comes with her. She thinks he means, I don't need blowjobs. I don't need crazy positions. I don't need lingerie. I don't need anything. Let's just watch reality TV and drink tea and eat cookies. And that's not what he means at all. So it's same as in this situation. When you were first dating, you probably said, do you really, what would you do if I stopped, looking like how you want? And he's like, oh, I would love you for you. But he wasn't thinking that you were going to really just stop on a dime, cut the hair that he loves, stop dyeing it, stop putting on makeup, stop putting on heels, stop wearing an underwire bra, just wear something that looks like something that potatoes are transported in, and just say, the whole thing has come to an end. The whole thing meaning you trying to look attractive to him or anyone of the opposite gender or the same gender, or yourself, quite honestly. So if this is the case, then you probably ought to bring it up. You should probably say, hey, I really miss when you used to wear, dresses or low-cut shirts, or when you used to be a blonde or whatever. I mean, this is very different than telling somebody to be something they never were, right? So I had a guy once who wrote in and said, I'm upset that my wife won't get a boob job. It wasn't even his wife, I think. I could try to find the post. It was his girlfriend. I'm like, get out of Dodge. You dated her with no boobs. Fault is yours. Boobs were that important. Guess what? She didn't have them to begin with. So, don't be an asshole. Probably just dump her so she can find somebody who isn't an asshole, honestly, if we're thinking about the good of the woman. But certainly don't think that you're right to do it, because she never had any boobs. Now you want her to have some from scratch. That's not right. However, if somebody was attracted to a woman who always used to use makeup, makeup and dress up and look a certain way that appealed to them, and all of a sudden this woman decided no longer, I'm never going to do that again, then it would be within that man's rights to ask why and to say that that is no longer very appealing to him and that it really hasn't been for however many years or decades or months she's been doing it. Right? So obviously, if somebody is going through some shit in real time, if your wife's in the middle of a depressive episode because her mother died, this isn't the time to say, hey, why don't you wear this form-fitting dress? But I don't know many men who are doing that. In fact, many men wait far longer than they would need to in order to even think about this as a problem because they so much don't want to be a huge douchebag. So anyhow, so the person's asking, what happens about, what, he didn't really ask what couples should do about this, but that's what I do. I try to offer solutions, not just, say, yeah, it sucks, your wife stopped dressing up. I try to give solutions. So one solution is actually open your mouth and say that this is important to you because the woman may have no idea. Because remember the honeymoon stage that I always talk about. When the woman is in the honeymoon stage, she likes to dress up. It's funny because they've done a lot of, experiments that show how women act different when they're ovulating. They dress in a more quote-unquote feminine way. Their voices sound higher. Men objectively find even their faces more attractive when they don't know it's the same woman. And then they'll have like 100 men rate this woman and her face when she's ovulating, and then the other ones look at her face when she's menstruating. And it's not just a frown when she's menstruating. Like, she's supposed to have a neutral expression in both times, but somehow the face is more attractive. Anyhow, it's hormones, So when your wife's hormones were racing like crazy in the early stages, she also it was like she was always ovulating. She was like perennially ovulating. That's the equivalent. And so she wanted to dress up. She wanted to look feminine, she wanted to look sexy, etc. So you say, all right, well, shit, I am a woman, and you could have two retorts, or let's not even say a retort. Let's say you're completely open-minded, you get where it's coming from, this whole idea, you get where a man would be coming from. You may have two follow-up questions. One might be, but hey, I don't look the same as I used to, so there's no makeup's gonna help that. So kind of, what am I even trying for? I bet that he just wants somebody younger and hotter. To which I answer, listen to my podcast about men don't want supermodels, and I'll get to that in a second. And then the second question, more philosophical, could be, what about if I just don't value that stuff anymore? What if I have grown up and I realize and a lot of women will think this, and I realize that a lot of the stuff I was doing, the stupid high heels, the underwire bras, all this bullshit that was super uncomfortable, it wasn't me. It was me trying to catch a man, and I was told that's how I had to look, and maybe my mother told me that that's how I had to dress, and I just hate that shit, and I hate the makeup, and I hate the heels, and I hate the bra, and I hate all of it, and I've really come into my own in recent years. I've become more confident since motherhood, perhaps, or I've really gotten to a new level of self-actualization in my personal psychotherapy, and I don't value that stuff anymore at all. Cool. That's fine. You know what is not fine, though? Your husband agreeing with that. That may not be fine. Everybody in a relationship deserves to grow and evolve in whatever way they want. However, it is extremely unfair and illogical to assume that the partner will have a concomitant self-actualization in the exact same regards, such that this man has an epiphany that he no longer likes women in makeup and heels and underwire bras or whatever. So this would be a discussion to have because, and this is real, the women that this commenter is discussing usually give up on something else, and I'll tell you what it is. You can guess. It's 3 letters, and it rhymes with Bex. So they're done. They're done with the underwire bras. They're done with the whole thing, and they're done with sex too, And I'll tell you, there are very, very, very few women that don't give a shit what they look like anymore, but are also into sex. Usually those two things go hand in hand. You still are into, and it's funny, I didn't even say, nor did this guy say working out, which is so funny because that refers back to my I said there was two responses a woman could have. In the first one, women will say, but I'm not going to look the same anyway, so isn't it just kind of all bullshit then, and kind of just a tragic story, because I'm not going to look the same anyhow, and he's still going to be disappointed because I'm so much older and fatter. Big shit. Most guys don't care at all if you're older and fatter. And that's what I was going to say, too, is that one we can really just put to bed as a total myth. Whatever you look like, if your husband is still married to you, he's probably still attracted to you, and he just wants you to kind of dress the same as you used to. So for, like, you know, he wants you to look like whatever you used to wear on dates. He don't care what size it is. He just wants the same thing. So if it used to be dresses that you would wear on dates when he thought you were really hot, wear the same thing. He's not going to care. He knows. Guess what? He knows you're not 25 anymore. Cat's out of the bag. So he wants the current woman that you are to wear those things. It also, by the way, reminds him of him being young and of your early courtship and of all of the fun and sexy times that you had. It makes him feel like a sexually viable man still if you're dressing up for him. That's why men like that, because it makes them feel very important. In addition to that, visually they're turned on. It makes them feel important and valuable and special that you would go through the effort of still trying to look the same. Not your body, remember. I mean, that would be gravy if you want to, like, go, you know, bust your ass at the gym. But really just wear the same clothes, the perfume, the makeup, whatever it is that he used to like that you used to do. So you may believe me or not, but most women, if they try, even in their new size or with their new wrinkles or whatever, to dress up the same, men are not difficult. Like, they are pretty simple. If they're still into you enough that they're still pursuing you for sex, they want you still to act like you give a shit about the sexual part of your relationship, which includes acting like you care if they find you attractive. Ooh, the proxy variable for that is dressing like you used to dress, or in some other new trendy way that they like. So not like you decided, like, oh, you know what, like, I don't ever like skirts again, even though that's all that he likes. So I'm sure he'll be cool with my pants all the time. No, he probably won't. I mean, maybe. Ask him, though. So the point here is, in both of these cases, we need to have, as usual, I encourage open conversation. Open conversation. So if you're somebody who says, I no longer feel like dressing up ever again, I've come to a new stage of my life, I'm pretty much ready to not ever dress up again for anybody. I think that's part of the patriarchal system, and I never want to do it again. Say that to your husband outright. And as I said before, he may also be like, I don't give a shit. Actually, what I care about is we don't have sex anymore either, by the way. And I thought that those two things were related, you know? And so the reason that I keep saying, like, you know, oh, why don't you wear your nice red dress, is because I think somehow that if you wear your nice red dress that you used to wear 15 years ago, then maybe you're going to want to have sex with me like you did 15 years ago. So most men, it's a proxy variable for sex, and then that would open up an even more important conversation, which is, you might say, I don't feel like ever doing that again, quite honestly, either. And then, obviously, ethically, this would turn into a conversation about future directions of the marriage. So you can't just say, I've decided to be a totally different person and you must stay with me. Not like anybody can say that. You don't have a gun, right? But that's not a fair expectation. So if you decide that you're totally changing who you are, then they can totally change whether or not they want to be in the relationship. That's totally fair. So much like if your husband changed on whatever sorts of dimensions are most important to you and then expected you to remain happily committed to him, he would be a fool, right? Because he's changing the contract. So we got to look at, my deepest hope is that from listening to my podcast, people will stop condescending to physical touch and physical attraction as a less meaningful aspect of a relationship, because from everything I see, 12+ years in private practice working with couples, it's about the most important. It's extremely important. It is necessary but not sufficient, but it is necessary. So it's necessary for most people that choose to be in a romantic/sexual relationship. Some people want a more asexual companionate relationship. That's not the norm, though. For most people, that spark or that feeling of physical attraction is important. And that's fine. That's totally biologically understandable and evolutionarily explained. So it should not be condescended to as though anybody's being superficial. So I entreat you to, if you are in this situation where your wife you feel has, quote, stopped trying, to open up the conversation and say, it's really important to me. I really wish that you would wear some of these things, to do your makeup again, to do your hair again, but tell me what you think. Because if this is really just, you're never going to do this again, and as I said, in 90% of the time, that means we also don't have a sex life anymore or anything that is, of any consequence. A sexless marriage, by the way, is less than 10 times a year. So there's plenty of people where women are like, man, we're having sex all the time. I think it's almost once a month. Well, girl, got something to tell you. That's like a sexless marriage definitionally, according to the research literature. So anyhow, my point is there should be a conversation about this, because if one person just gives up the ghost on how they look, and remember, you can. I'm not saying anybody has to be tied to still wearing what they used to wear 20 years ago, ever. You don't even have to do that for his birthday. But what you can't also do is say that you're being a good partner. You're not being a good partner. I mean, let's be real. He wants you to act like you're, still into him by acting sexy and dressing up or whatever the case may be. And you used to do it. So if you don't want to do it anymore, then it doesn't mean that he's an insensitive dick for wanting you to do something that you used to do. You see my logical point, correct? So you have, obviously, women have, and if it's a man listening, your wife has the right to change, grow, and evolve in whatever way she wants, but you also have the right to not want that anymore. And most men that are making a big stink out of this and are really yearning for some change in this dimension, it's not just about her wearing the low-cut shirt. It's about the fact that he tries to touch her and she looks at him like he's a cockroach. So on that note, I will end this topic, and please do subscribe, because coming up right next is the one about when men let themselves go. And this is a big one in the manosphere, meaning the blogs written by men for men, about how to, maintain your sexual relationship, feel good about yourself, make your marriage work. All of these guys really say that the number one thing is to get in shape and look good. And I am going to say what I think. I've already talked about the in shape part, so you could refer back to that. I'll cover it briefly in the paid episode. But what women really think looks good and what they feel when the man lets himself go to hell in a handbasket. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great day, everybody.